So we're going to quickly now segue over to Colleen Wisler. Colleen is it's Charles Wisler, the nephew of Brother Marinus, Captain La Rue, and she's going to share some thoughts in regards to their experience with Brother Marinus. So, Colleen, begin when you would like.
Hi. So my name is Colleen Wisler. I married Charles John Wisler 40 years ago. His mother is Isabel Hannigan Wisler. Her mother was Brother Marinus's sister. So Brother Marinus had two brothers and a brother that passed, and then he had two twin sisters. As many of you know, he's the youngest of five. The twins, Irma and Isabel. Isabel is my husband's grandmother. So Charles' mother was the only child of Isabel La Rue Hannigan, and her father, Mr. Hannigan. I can't think of his. I had it written down here. I'm a little confused. So Brother Marinus's niece was Isabel Hannigan, and Irma and her husband had no children. I know that the other brothers had children, but my husband really didn't know them. We stayed in Philadelphia. The Hannigans and Whistler stayed in Philadelphia. Can you hear me?
Yep, just fine.
Okay. So the house on Distant Street is the house that Captain La Rue bought for his parents. And Distant Street, we just sold it last year. That's the house that he bought for his parents. And then eventually his two sisters moved in there. Originally, his parents lived on a street called Oakmont Street. And his sisters each had a house on Oakmont Street. It's a little block right before the river in Northeast Philadelphia. Northeast Philadelphia at the time when Brother Marinus purchased this house in the Mayfair section for his parents was originally a lot of farmland. So this end of the city, I still live in Northeast Philadelphia, at one point was mainly farmland, and we live off of Frankfurt Avenue, and so did Brother Marinus's family. That was called King's Highway, and that was the way all the way up to Ben Salem and William Penn. It's an original road. In fact, there's a bridge down in Holmesburg that was built back when William Penn was in Pennsylvania. The area, let me see. So Isabel La Rue Hannigan had the one daughter, which was my mother-in-law, Isabel, and her middle name was Catherine, after her grandmother, Brother Marinus's mother. And Isabel and John had 7 children. They lived in the house on Oakmont Street, and then his parents, Brother Marinus's parents, moved to Distant Street. Distant Street was a newer home with just a bigger porch and they had a porch on Oakmont Street, but it was a tree-lined street because it was all farmland. And there's 7 siblings and 7 children that Isabel and John Wisler had. So Brother Marinus had 7 nieces and nephews. The oldest was Catherine, and she married Michael Schnitzer. She's now deceased. Catherine died at 55, and her husband Michael's still alive. My husband and I are very close to Michael. He's close to all the Whistler's. They never had children. And then it's Charles and I. He's the second. He's the oldest boy. And we have one son, Patrick. So we're married 40 years. Our son is 31. Then there's another sibling, Margaret Ann Wisler. She married Francis Roken, who was a neighbor on Distant Street. And they have a daughter, Colleen Roken. Colleen's 46, and Timothy Roken. Timmy's about 39, and his wife, Jessica Roken. They just got married about a year and a half, 2 years ago. Then there was Thomas Wisler. He is now deceased. He died 2 years ago. And his wife also died like 3 months after him. They have a daughter, Jennifer Wisler. She married Danny Stout. They have 2 young children. And Tommy and Ann, they have Ann's children. They all lived in the Distant Street house. I'll come back to the Distant Street house in a minute that Brother Marinus purchased. There's another sister, Teresa Wisler. She's still alive. She has 3 daughters and a son, Gabrielle, Maxine, and another Isabel, and Jonathan. There was another brother, Robert Wisler. He lived in St. Dominic's Parish, which is important, but he is now deceased. Both of these brothers that are deceased are younger than my husband. He has a wife, Brita Wisler, and they have 1 daughter, Colleen Wisler. Then there's the baby is Michael Wisler. He has a wife, Marlene Wisler, and they have 2 daughters, Amanda and Megan. And Amanda's going to get married next Thanksgiving time. Now, they lived, Brother Marinus, we called him affectionately Uncle Budge. Not Butch, not Bo, it's Budge, Budge. That's all I ever knew him as, is Uncle Budge. I never had the pleasure to meet him. He would send us cards for our birthdays, and he sent us letters for our wedding, etc. He never came to any of the kids' weddings, not the weddings. But he did call my mother-in-law on Sundays. So my mother-in-law, being an only child, but yet having 7 children, she lived in the house on Distant Street. So let me step back. My mother-in-law, Isabel Wisler, and her husband, John Wisler, they got divorced. And Isabel moved into her parents' house, which was owned by Brother Marinus. His sisters moved in first. Mrs. Wisler, my mother-in-law, her mother and her twin sister, they lived in the house on Distant Street, which was a bigger house. And then the children, my husband and his older sisters, the one below him, the one ahead of him, they would go over, and my husband, they took care of their grandmother and their Aunt Ermy. They lived there, and they still lived in the Oakmont Street house. It's a little confusing, but the house meant a lot because Uncle Budge had bought it for his parents, and then he deeded it to his 2 sisters. My husband says that the only time he ever came back to Philadelphia, which they can recall, because I think he went into the Abbey in 54, and my husband was born in 57, is he came home when his grandmom died and when his aunt died. They both died the same year. And they both are buried in St. Dominic's Parish graveyard. When I was telling you, St. Dominic's is also on Frankfort Avenue, which was originally called King's Highway, which was the road that took you all the way up to Pennsbury Manor, which is where William Penn is from, the oldest road here in the Northeast. So they all, Mr. and Mrs. La Rue, are buried in St. Dominic's Parish graveyard. It's not that far from my house. And my mother-in-law's Ermy and Isabel La Rue, they're both married there. And so is Brother Marinus's brother, Marinus. He's also buried in St. Dominic's grave. There's no more room in that grave. It's a very old church. It was built in 1847. I have it in here. It's a beautiful church near us. And I don't know what you know about Philadelphia, but Philadelphia was a city of what we call parishes. So people would say to you, they still say it today, what parish are you from? It was a large Catholic enclave in the city. So my husband's family, from what Father Sinclair told us and what artifacts we have given to my husband and I from his mother, that they were originally from St. Joachim's Parish, which is in Frankfort, now known as like the Padre Pio home. They help unwed mothers and they feed people. St. Joachim's was a big, thriving parish in Frankfort, but the areas of Kensington and Frankfort have really changed, and those parishes have closed. the parish of St. Joachim's. The school's closed, but that was their original parish. Let me see what else I was going to tell you. A lot here. So Isabel La Rue Hannigan and John Hannigan, like I told you, lived on Oakmont Street. And her twin sister, Irma Lambert and Frank Lambert, they lived about 10 houses away on Oakmont Street in Holmesburg, Tacony neighborhood of Philadelphia. That was part of St. Bernard's Parish. However, St. Bernard's Parish wasn't built till 1927. And then Uncle Budge purchased the house on Distant Street for his parents to live there. And then that's what my sister-in-law told me yesterday. The person who would know all the information is my mother-in-law, but we lost her and she was about 64 years old suddenly. So the house on Distant Street stayed in the family. They sold the house on Oakmont Street after their grandmother, my mother-in-law, sold the house because her grandmother, her mother, Isabel, and her Aunt Ermy, they both were deceased. So then the family, my husband's mother and the 7 children, they moved to Distant Street. And that was a big three bedroom house, but it was big compared to Oakmont Street. Oakmont was a tiny little patchwork house. They were all row homes. So my husband and his 2 sisters, they were already in high school. And they moved to Oakmont Street. The other kids all attended, some of them attended St. Bernard's, and then they went to public school, Mayfair Elementary School. And they all graduated from Lincoln High School here in Philadelphia. Catherine was the only one that graduated from St. Hubert's, which is a Catholic girls' high school. When I met my husband, they lived on Distant Street, and it was a house full of a lot of love. Uncle Budge would call. My mother-in-law would have big Sunday dinners when I was dating my husband, and then when I got married. And Uncle Budge would call, and my mother-in-law would talk to him on Sundays. When the kids were really little, they had a 55 Bel Air. And my mother-in-law would put all 7 kids in and drive to the Abbey on Saturdays. They think it was Saturdays. And Uncle Budge, Brother Marinus, he ran the little gift shop. And for them, being 7 kids, it was a big deal. My husband was allowed to go behind the counter with him and help sell the candy, which was a big deal for them. My sister-in-law had me laughing last night. She said she remembered when he would give them jars of apple butter, and then they would have that during the week for breakfast. They thought that was a pretty cool thing. Let me see what else here. So my mother-in-law was deeded the house from Uncle Budge, and the house became hers. Then my mother-in-law started to not do so well in her late 50s, early 60s, and Catherine Schnitzer, her daughter, Catherine Wisler, moved to Somerton, another far up northeast parish, St. Christopher's, and my mother-in-law moved in with my husband's oldest sister, who was a year older than him. She'd be 69 if she was still alive, and her husband. And they built her like a little area. It was nice. My husband and my brother-in-laws built my mother-in-law like a little suite. So then her son, Tommy Wisler, he was remarried. He had a wife and then he remarried, and he had her children, his children. So they raised their children in the Distant Street house. When Father Sinclair and Doreen came to our house last year for dinner in the fall, the kids had just sold the house because we had lost Tommy, and they sold the house. And we felt bad, but it needed a lot of work. And my husband used to do the work, but he has become ill, so he wasn't able to do the work. But they do remember Uncle Budge coming to the funeral of their grandmother and their aunt. They died the same year in 1973. My husband remembers talking to him, being with him, and being at the funeral. Everybody's buried in St. Dominic's on Frankfurt Avenue, and that was the only parish up here because it was all farmland. St. Bernard's, where they lived on Oakmont Street, St. Matthew's, they opened in about 1927, but people still belong to St. Dominic's, and his son, Charlie's brother, lived in St. Dominic's. So I'm going on and on. And that was it. I sent a lot of pictures. I'm sorry. Are you
So,
asking me?
yeah, Colleen, we're gonna be wrapping up shortly. So, so go ahead and any final words.
The final words is that Charlie's mother, Mrs. Wisler, my mother-in-law, gave my husband and I had told Father Sinclair and Doreen this. We have a lot of artifacts that he got when he was traveling as a merchant marine, a lot of things from the Orient. We have all these scrapbooks with pictures and articles, and all from Brother Marinus. And we just were always told by my mother-in-law, someday someone's going to reach out to you about my Uncle Budge. And she said to me and my husband, he's my oldest son, Colleen, take care of it. And someday you're going to hear about him because he did beautiful work saving these 14,000 people and five. So we saved it. And then I heard about it through my brother-in-law, Tommy, who was in the Navy. And I know one of the authors reached out to him. And then I saw Father Sinclair from my pastor who said, I don't think your husband has a relative that's going to be a saint. And then he said, you need to see this video of Father Sinclair. So we're just, when Father Sinclair did the video, he said there is no family. And I said to my husband, we got all Uncle Budge's things. We got to reach out to somebody. My husband and I have had some medical issues, but we will do anything to help the cause of the great men that served in the war. My father was a veteran. So whatever you need, now that we're feeling a little better. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Colleen.